I had completed a story that was a camaraderie, brotherhood story. Yours is the night. And I've explored a lot of different family relationships in different novels. And one I had not really explored was female friendship, like a sisterhood story. And I wanted to do that. And I knew it was going to be partly epistolary, so told through letters, but also told through ephemera, like newspaper clippings, um, interview transcripts, radio recording, things like that. And so I wanted to do something like that. I knew it was going to be in the mountains, and I knew that it was going to center on or have something to do with these vehicles from the 1930s and 40s called the Galloping Geese. And they're these very unique vehicles that were invented to service these remote mountain towns in the San Juan region of the Rockies in Colorado. And there are only 7 of them. They're all unique from each other. And they're just these plucky, endearing. You see one and you love it. You just can't help it. I know that sounds strange to say about a vehicle, but they have so much personality. I'll show you a picture. This is an older picture. This is one of the only research resources I could find on them because they're it's kind of an obscure corner of history. And so you can see it's basically like a bus or a truck, or the first ones were made out of a limousine, different from what we picture as a limousine, attached to something that would haul cargo, mail, and the occasional passenger, because these towns that had sprung up around mining had played out to some extent, and people started leaving, and so they could no longer justify the big expense to run a steam train. And so they thought, what can we do? There's still people here. The train still has the mail contract, and they invented these vehicles. So because it's centered on these vehicles, which only operated on this, very specific place of geography, that narrowed down my location and the time period, 1930s, 1940s. And so again, you're just following the clues at that point. What could a story about mail or letters entail? What could a story about friendship entail? And so the intersection of those, of course, is pen pals. And so I got to explore pen pals and how could a friendship grow out of that. And so that's sort of how that story came to be. And it just built layer by layer from there. I don't live in the Rockies. I have been there. I visited that specific area to do research and just to see it and feel it. But I did, as I mentioned before, grow up by mountains. I grew up by the Sierras. The Sierras and the Rockies have a lot in common, just as far as how the mountains act, how weather systems act around it, how towns, mining, all of that. And yet they're also very unique. So I was very familiar from my own history of some estates. Coming back to your question about estates, these beautiful houses that were built in the Sierras, specifically around Lake Tahoe, kind of springing out of the riches that came from mining. And so I drew on some of that. I got to visit a mining tunnel to go inside of a mine. I got to, I just, whenever I could, and I'm very lucky again that I was able to visit Colorado for this one and just see it and talk to the people and see what people love about it and how unique it was. The waterfalls, how the mountains spill into waterfalls. And so yes, to answer your question, some of it I visited there, some of it's drawn from my own history in the mountains, and some of it's made up for the story. It's just a giant web. And I was just calling it Mercy Peak because that's the name of the town. That's the name of the mountain. And that sounds strange, but that happens a lot in mountain towns. A town will be named the same as the lake nearby or the mountain nearby. So I was just calling it Mercy Peak. And then there's a titling process that happens that's in conjunction with the publisher, where I'll provide information about the story and the geography and the themes. And I'll provide a list of words that connect, symbolism, working titles, other title ideas, and then they take it to their brilliant titling committee. And they are the ones actually who came up with Born of Gilded Mountains as one of the, so my first suggestion was Mercy Peak. Their first suggestion was something different. neither felt quite right to both sides. And so they went back to the drawing board. And when they said Born of Gilded Mountains, I just loved it. It's perfect. It has a lyrical ring to it. It also expresses that mountains are a really prominent part of the story. And I think there's some mystery there. What's Born of Gilded Mountains? What does that even mean? You don't really know right off the bat what that means. And I hope as readers read it, they'll discover there could be a lot of different meanings. There's a lot that comes out of these mountains, and it's not just literal physical gold. Some of it's gold that comes from relationship and history and redemption and courage. And it really takes a lot of courage to live in a place like that, especially back then when it felt very isolated. So it came from the publisher, and I love it. I have a quite different project that's coming out in about a year, so spring of 2025, that's actually geared more towards children and their caregivers, whether that's parents, grandparents, teachers, whoever, camp counselors. And it's very centered on adventure, like hands-on adventures you can have outside together, and thought-provoking things about that, things we can learn from the world around us. And so that's been a real joy to work on. It's already finished. It'll be off to the printer very soon.